Hello there, my loves. Welcome back to this incredible Magdalene Summit, where we're weaving together so many different voices on the significance of Mary Magdalene as a historical figure, but also why she's arising in our consciousness so fully at this time. Today, I am joined by Dr. Nicola Amadora, who's a dear sister of mine, and I'm so excited to get to share her with you because I believe that she has another unique thread and unique perspective and experience to share of Mary Magdalene. So Nicola has been ushering thousands of women for decades into the Holy Grail and to embody the feminine in the streets of this world as a spiritual teacher, a psychologist, a women's leader, a priestess, and mystic. In a refreshingly real and enlivening way, Nicola leads Mary Magdalene and the Deep Feminine retreats, trainings, and courses worldwide for the rising of the sacred feminine to radically turn lives and our world around. And I absolutely bow to you, sister, with the beautiful work that you do. And what I'd love to do, Nicola, is to start with the question I've been asking everybody, which has been fascinating, honestly, to hear the threads in the weave. But how did Mary Magdalene come into your life personally, and who is she for you? And then we can sort of dive into the deeper part of your offering for today.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. It is an absolute joy. And it's also for me a delight to see how popular she's becoming. Because at the time when I met her, nobody knew her from squat. She was still, the one who in the Bible, there was few mentionings of her. But when she came that one night where I was, pretty devastated in my life. I had lost a lot. And I called on the divine beings and I said, I was on my knees. I said, help. And in that moment, which was like a miracle, the big wooden door in my house just swung open. You can't open it without going to the handle. It just swung wide open and there was a huge storm going on. And in that moment, I saw two figures. And one was, I asked, who are you? And they were full of light. And one said, I am Mary Magdalene. The other one was Jeshua. Now, Jeshua I knew, but her, who are you? Mary Magdalene. And I could feel what she did in that moment. She not only embraced me in my grief, but she touched my forehead with a kiss. I give you the kiss of life. I am with you and I stand beside you through all what you are going through. And that completely changed me because I did not know her. It was many decades ago, I had never heard of her. But what I could feel was like the spiritual path I've been walking for 30 years, something completely changed with her arrival. Because what she brought is an incredible revelation, a teaching, a spiritual path that I feel is so relevant and so important in our lives, but also for women especially. And for me, her arrival was so significant that I not only searched who she was, which was hard at that time to find anything because she wasn't on the internet, because the internet wasn't existing so much at that time. But I found it in old written gospels and stuff that was hidden. And there was the sentence that we often hear today, I reveal unto you what is hidden. And I could feel that for me, she inspired me so deeply because she was a flesh and blood woman in her life and an incredible, radical, revolutionary healer, the embodiment of true love itself. And I could feel what inspired me the most is that she walked it in her life, just like he did, but under tremendous challenges that I feel is the wound of women and the feminine wound. She had walked through all of it, all the way. That's her way, all the way. Love no matter what, all the way.
Thank you for that. You know, I can feel as you're speaking the presence of her energy in your experience of her. And I think what's so amazing, and I've said this, and I'm weaving the thread through from all the interviews that I've been doing, but one of the components that is really amazing to me is that nearly everyone I've spoken to has this shared experience of meeting Magdalena at a moment of deep adversity, at a moment of deep challenge, myself included. And so there's this this thread around who she is as a radical revolutionary healer. I love that you said that. And I think what I'd love to do is weave a thread with you, Nicola, around a question to do with that, which is really, you know, we understand that Magdalene translates as the tower of strength or the watchtower. And I'm curious from your perspective, how she stood at that, you know, what does that even mean to stand as a tower of truth or a tower of strength, especially for someone like Mary Magdalene, who obviously was deeply rejected and reviled for standing as that?
Because that's what we need in the world right now. And I want to actually include here from the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, it's a short reading. He said this, I tell you this, when all have abandoned me, only she shall stand beside me like a tower built on a high hill and fortified cannot fall, nor can it be hidden. From this day forth, she shall be known as Magdalene, for she shall be as a tower to my flock. And the time will soon come when her tower shall stand alone by mine. This is a significant piece because in that moment, he recognized her. And in that moment, he declared her as the tower of strength, Magdalene. It is that essence piece that she could stand even when the waves, I mean, I just remember this little story when she went on a boat and she had to flee Israel because they were prosecuting the apostles and her. And just imagine she stands on this little rickety boat with maybe 3 companions. Supposedly she was also pregnant at that time, and has no idea where she will land, where it will go. And on top of it, at that time, the boats weren't as strong as our boats are now. So the waves come, the waves rise, the waves are mellow at times. It's like our lives. The rising, the falling, the winds, the sun. But in all that, she stood in something far deeper. And that is her trust and her knowing of the truth that holds her through all of it, the love that guides her through all of it, that deep knowing that is what in her teaching is the nous, to be found in the nous of the heart, the inmost center of the heart, where there's the union between human and divine. But also, she said, root in the depths of the roots, for here you shall find me, which also how can you stand strong when at the time, even in Israel, when we remember, she wasn't liked particularly by the apostles, by some of them, yes, by John, but others rejected her, told her, what's this woman doing here? What did she do in those moments, I wonder? And how she was ostracized anyway, even among the crowd from Jeshua. And he kept standing up for her, but she stood also. She stood because she did teach anyway. She did heal anyway. She embraced those who rejected her anyway. She stood for love anyway. The same as when he was crucified, she stood with him through the pain. And she was the one who declared the good news, and nobody believed her that he had risen. She stood in the truth. Come what may, love no matter what, come what may. That's one of her core sentences, I think.
I love that you bring that piece of the scripture into us, this piece that we have, this thread. We have so few threads, really, that we're weaving with, that are evident. There's many that are hidden and being revealed, some by the voices on the summit, some, then there's lots of different stories that we're here to discern and weave with, right? But this piece that you've just spoken I think is so crucial now more than ever. This idea of standing at the tower of strength in adversity, in the face of hatred, in the face of great challenge, in the face of being a refugee, in the face of losing her beloved, being murdered in front of her, in the face of like you said, the apostles who were divided, and that she was the one who was the unifier, the one who was trying to bring them back together, the one who knew she was the evangelist for the good news, for the message to come into the world. And I think about that often when I'm walking in my life, that we're living in such precarious times right now. And it's a very intense world that we're encountering. And I don't think any of us can avoid seeing that. And I'm curious about what you feel like Mary Magdalene is really offering us now, because obviously she's rising in our consciousness. And how is she actually modeling or transmitting to us what it means to walk as the Holy Grail? I'm really curious about this piece of the thread for you.
I can, there's many pieces, as you said, that are still hidden and being revealed. But one of the core pieces, I think, from her that turns the traditional spirituality upside down, and it shakes up also the patriarchy, is that the feelings are our gateways, that the senses of the body, that the body is the temple, instead of being the thing that you have to go beyond. And the feelings that often you have to go beyond, that's the traditional spirituality often. But what she's saying really, and what she's been living, is matter. Matter is sacred. Your humanity is sacred. That's radical. She is all of it. She's the blood and she's the wine that's united in the Holy Grail. She's the pain and she's the bliss. There's nothing left out. Everything is included. And yet something deeper rises from that. It's that when she walked that in her life, she became the Holy Grail because she embodied it in her, relationships, in the way she touched, in the way she walked. And I think this radical embodied piece as the feminine is what can actually help us at this time. That means also that, as I said before, this human, fully divine, she united. It's the sacred union in there that nothing is separate from the divine. And yeah, and I think for me often this image of like she walked with the doves flew with her, you know, it's a classic symbol with her, the gentleness she had, and then the fierce lioness. There again, she united something. She united all bodies, but she united something that's difficult for us to unite, is the strength of the lioness and the gentleness of the dove.
I really want to sit with that image for a moment because it's so deep, metaphorically speaking, symbolically speaking, the lioness and the dove. And I just learned really recently that in the Baha'i faith, which I don't know very much about, but I was speaking with somebody about this, and they said that Mary Magdalene features quite large inside the Baha'i faith, which I did not know at all. And in that faith, they call her the Lioness of God.
Wow.
Okay, right? Isn't that beautiful? So I'm just threading that needle in, and I haven't done the research yet, Nicola, to see where that comes from, but I'm super curious because I got so total chills when I just said that. But there's this a symbol of the dove, the divine Sophia, this beautiful connection into that energy that's signified by the dove, and then this energy of the lioness. And I think there's an alchemy.
That's it.
Right. And I want to talk to you about this because I know this is where you and I join hearts, and it makes me tearful because I feel like this is what we're really being called to in the world. And I think it's one of the most difficult paths to find tenderness and ferocity and what happens when they're married. So let's talk about that. What is the alchemy of the dove and the lioness?
Yeah, I think what you just, it touched me when you said also the same, that is such a profound union that really, for me, that alchemy is true love. And that's what she radically lived through all of it. So this gentle as a dove, there's, this tenderness of the heart that's pierced open, that allows itself to be touched and feel it all, and let that heart break if it must. And at the same time, to have that ferocious lioness where she can stand. I stand for. This question is a very useful question, I think, for anybody to ask themselves. What are you standing for, really? What are you living for? What is that the deepest place inside of you that really calls on you, that lives in the noose of the heart, that lives in your belly, that fire? Because I remember this little story that I once read. I cannot remember where. It was the story of her and Joshua together as they were walking, and he was upset about something. And he was, I bet he had his fits too. Probably she too, she was a redhead. And in his fit, he blasted the fig tree. And she stood up to him and said, "This shall not pass." And with the breath of her love, she touched, this is one of her gifts to us too, she touched that fig tree back to life. And this is what she brings to us, this invitation to connect to the deep life force that literally can turn not just hearts, but worlds.
Thank you for being that for us for a moment. And I feel this radical piece of what the teachings have revealed, I know to you, because we've had these conversations, but also to many of us around this alchemy of the oppositions, of the seemingly opposite states of being, like how when you are facing into the extreme adversity, that she must have experienced in her life, could she then bring love? And what would love really do and be in the face of that adversity? And I think that this is a question I know I've asked you before, but I think it's a really important question, which is, from your lensing, what is that way of love? What is the way that she was teaching, that she was embodying? And how can we, as modern day women and men, be guided by that?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Of course, it's a life path. I don't think it goes overnight, but to open up to those deeper qualities that are within our soul, they're still hidden for everybody, some, and to dare to cultivate that courage. And now that corazon in the word contains the heart, to cultivate the courage. You don't have courage unless you walk through your fear. So not to get beyond the fear, but also not to get stuck in the fear, because it's like, but we need something that she had and that everybody has inside in the nous. It's that knowing, what are you living for? What are you standing for? Because only that, something greater, will give you the courage to do it anyway, to walk through the storm, along this, when the thorns are there, or along the rose petals. I mean, it is literally the rose path. People want the petals because they're soft like a dove, but there's the thorns. And that daring to walk through, no matter what comes, in the name of her, in the name of love, in the name of that what really lives within you, that's calling to be revealed and lived.
Oh, so beautiful. And I think you were right when you said this is a path. And for me, in my own journey, right, I've touched on this core truth of love in many different spiritual traditions. And of course, because at the center of all of them is love in a different frequency, love in a different face. And I think Mary Magdalene has so many faces, right, that she shows us of what love can look like. And I think that's part of her great appeal, is that there's so many, we can see in her so many aspects of the divine feminine, of the feminine face of power, of love, of wisdom, of truth, all of these synonymous names of love. So thank you for that. Nicola, I know I could sit and talk with you all for many, many hours about all of this, and we've just been touching really the surface, but I'm wondering if you can maybe lead us in a little bit of a deeper experience of what you're speaking of, because I think you've mentioned the word embodied, and I think that is where she lives for me, is in my being. So let's go wherever you're guided to take us, my love.
I'm going to do something just very short and simple, but it's an easy way in. And I invite everyone, if you like, to just close your eyes for a moment and take one sip of breath. And we call it here on this path the Ruach, the holy breath, through your nose, and breathe it out through your mouth. And let the sound of ah come out with the out breath. It's like a pleasure sound. Just open your mouth and let the ah, couple of times. It's like and then just see what it's like when you add the words in this one taste of life, I dwell. In this one taste of breath, I dwell. And breathe in and out like she is breathing you in this moment. And I invite you with the breath to actually let your breath drop down, because we're going into the descent. Feel the roots of your spine and breathe there. Just keep the breath, the in and the out breath, the Ruach, in this one taste of life, in this one taste of breath, I dwell. And let it go all the way down to your feet. And let your body rock a little bit, because her meditations are not stiff. There's a slight movement in your body. Follow that down and let the body rock a little bit. And then begin to breathe into your heart. And in this moment, I invite Mary Magdalene to stand beside you, to touch your heart alive. To touch your belly. Don't force feeling her, just notice what it's like if this red lady stands beside you, stands for you. I stand for you. And she's offering you a kiss of life, bestowing life upon you. Breathe out through the mouth. Let's see what it's like in this one taste of life, of love, I dwell. Doesn't need to be much. Can be very small. If you pay attention, it becomes huge. As you sit, you take your seat in her, you take your seat in earth. Now feel your weight down. Yeah, just drop that down. Take a good seat, like a full seat. Like you have a right to be here. Like even if she was rejected, she still had a right to be here and she claimed it. So claim your seat. Be bold. It's your place. You have a place. And then feel into what are you willing to stand for? Let it arise from within, from the deep, deep inside. It may come right now, it may come tomorrow. I invite you to walk with that. What are you standing for? Because she needs you right now. And so all beings need you. And he says, I'm the feminine seen in all faces who travel this earth. I breathe the breath of life through you. I whisper and roar as your voice. I say unto you, for the sake of all, waken, waken my love from the slumber and rise.
Oh, thank you. I'm very moved. I think that that question that you ask of what are you willing to stand for is actually really crucial. And it goes back to that first image of what the name Magdalene means, which is one of the translations, right? Watchtower woman or tower of strength.
Yeah.
And for me, that when I first found that out, Nicola, when I first realized that that was what one of the translations could be, it hit me. It was such a powerful image and such a powerful call forward, especially for the feminine, for us, with the history that we have in the last couple of thousand of years and longer, really, of being so denigrated and, dismissed. And so I really want to encourage everyone who's listening to really take this contemplation that Nicola's given us into our day of what are you standing for, really? And how does that change who you are to really have to reckon with that?
Yeah, because I find for myself, it gives me a strength. She's really the tower of strength, not the tower that's guarded. There's like this tenderness of the heart here. And at the same time, there is a force to be reckoned with. And to have this both is the tower of the true strength. And so we can also explore what it's like to walk with the simple sentence, I take my stand in her.
Oh, thank you so much for taking us into this inquiry around her and to presencing this profound teaching. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with now as we walk into the day? I mean, there's that beautiful contemplation, but if there's anything else that you would like to seed in us.
I want to seed the courage in everyone who's listening, that this is a path of liberation and a path of revelation, but it's truly a path that leads you for sure home to who you are and to be able to stand as a torchbearer in this world and light that fire for the sake of all beings.
Well, thank you everyone for being here with us today for this beautiful offering from Nicola. Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you.
And I just want to bow down to all of you who have been coming to these interviews and weaving the threads of what resonates with you, of the many faces and the stories that you've been told. And this is yet another invitation into into an inquiry of who is really Mary Magdalene for us now in this modern day moment.
And I want to thank everyone who listened. And I want to thank you, Elaine. And for together, let's thank Mary Magdalene, who bravely walked away before us and lights the way.
Blessed be. Thank you, everybody.